This is awesome. It's been a while since I talked. I think it was last year, at the beginning of the year. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Another big round of applause for improving. Thank you. Cheers. I specifically themed my talk after the previous talk because, one, it made sense, and two, because I think it's an important topic. And I'll do much injustice if I try to cover everything in this, so it'll be scraping the surface. There's a lot of depth and nuance to accessibility, inclusive design, so we'll try to get through as much as we can and leave a lot of time for questions. Cool? And it works, sweet. My name's Adam Deardurff. I work at Insight, which is a technology company based in downtown. We're a global company, really do custom software development, and I'm in the strategy and design practice, or UX, or whatever your company wants to call it. So I have a team of people that works with and around me, and around designing, researching, building the right thing for people. And that's really exciting in the days that we're in now, especially in the world of accessibility, which I'll get into. My background, I have 14 years. I started in digital marketing, and that gave me a really good foundation in research and basing all of my decisions around customer insights. But what it didn't do was give me a good foundation in why accessibility is important. And that's one thing that I want to focus on today. So if you all could get out your cell phones, I think accessibility means a lot of different things to different people. And so if you could enter www.menti.com, and there should be a little place for a code. And if you could type in 1, 2, 3 words of what accessibility means, or what you think of when you hear that word. Oh, it'd be helpful if that was on the screen, wouldn't it? Wait for it. There you go. And we're live. That's it, folks. I'm out. Everyone's thinking really hard about this. I love it. I want to capture this because the last time I talked about accessibility, all I heard was like, I don't understand, it's painful. And this is very much more, I feel like we have a very empathetic audience out here that has, how many people know of accessibility or have worked in the accessibility realm? This is fantastic, okay. But as you see, there are a lot of different words that people surround themselves with when they talk about it. Accessibility, disabilities, usability, inclusivity. And my foundation from marketing and digital was really mostly around accessibility as a checklist and requirements for what I needed to do. And when I moved over to work for Insight was when I really started working on software for employees. And all of a sudden my mindset shifted when I looked at people that had to use software for 40 hours a week, and it was painful for them to use. And you had people that had to zoom in their screen. We recently did a usability test with a user that had a 40-inch monitor, and they used Zoom text to zoom the screen into 400%, and they navigated the screen in quadrants, and it was amazing. Like, he did not miss a beat. I would challenge any of you to do the same thing, and we would lose our minds. With that being said, this was my history in accessibility. Yeah. A lot of people have probably heard of this one. For all of the innovation that Domino's has done well, they've had some problems from an accessibility standpoint. They're very innovative, but in 2016, I think Guillermo Robles, decided to sue them because he couldn't place an order using his screen reader through his website, and then he tried his iPhone. And a lot of people don't think about accessibility of mobile devices, but they do have screen readers and ways to use them. And he won, and instead of Domino's fixing their stuff, they took it to Supreme Court, and you see what happened. It's not just Domino's. It's a lot of other companies that you're probably familiar with. I like to call it lawsuit-driven design in terms of the safety mechanisms that our companies are trying to put in to curb risk and be compliant. And there's no surprise of why they're doing that. Lawsuits have gone through the roof. I think 177% increase in 2018. I'm sure it'll be just as much in 2019, if not more. So how many people are familiar with this? WCAG. So the ADA compliance refers to WCAG standards. If you aren't familiar, W3C put together accessibility standards, 3 different levels. There's A, AA, and AAA. A lot of the clients that I work with and companies I work for are shooting for AA compliance, and they recently rolled out 2.1, which has some other things in it, but it has everything from color contrast to font sizes to screen readers to everything you could. That list is just a starting point. If you try to go through here, here's the checklist for being accessibility. Good luck. It's a big task when you try to bite it off in this chunk. And so there are a number of different tools and things that we can do. So this brings us to the point of why it's important. Why is it important to you? And just kind of simmer on that question for a minute. I talked about risk and compliance and lawsuits. And is that really what accessibility is about, or is it about something more? So how many people have done the straw test? This is great. One that someone's done it, but then no one else has done it. So if the person I was speaking of that we did a test with, imagine having a screen zoomed in 400%. So what I'm going to ask you to do is take this like it's a straw and put it over your eye. And then I'm going to ask you to fill out this form using that straw. So ready? All right. Let's see everyone. This is really fun for me to watch people do this too. So this is intentionally a pain, but it signifies a lot of the complexity that people using a screen at that size and that have issue with vision come with. So I call this reactive accessibility. You can call it lawsuit-driven design or whatever you want to call it, but the fact that there are bad experiences that we take that and we're like, oh yeah, we should be doing this and this and this. It's obvious, so let's fix it. And then you fix it and it's like, oh yeah, let's rearrange things. So straw test again, now try. That seems better. A lot of people put their straw down earlier, either because they were uncomfortable or because it was easy, one of the two. So in terms of that, like visually it aligns, but did anyone think about cognitively if someone didn't understand what name meant? What does that mean to you, or what does that mean to a user to try to understand these things? So try this one out for size. Oh, what am I signing up for? That's kind of important, right? What is your full name? Instead of just putting your first name, that could be important. A lot of people don't think about all of the other types of disabilities and constraints that people have in their life, whether those are visual, physical, or otherwise. And it's not a small segment, so a lot of people think of it as an edge case. A lot of that is, I think, because we don't see it. We don't see it enough, we don't think about it enough, but there's a huge segment of the population that either knows or doesn't know that they're disabled at any point. These are just the vision numbers globally. 2.2 billion people. That's crazy. In America, I forget the numbers. I wish I had written them down, but I didn't. But the idea is, can we be more than reactive? Can we build the right thing from the beginning? And that relies on us understanding the types of people and things that we're designing for. Whether that's visual, auditory, physical, cognitive limitations, we need to understand those things and build them into our processes. And we have lots of tools and resources to be able to do that. So Spectrum, anyone familiar with Spectrum? It's a plugin for Chrome. It takes what's a beautiful Chipotle site and it says, okay, what would that look like if I were colorblind? And it has a number of different settings that you can go through and actually look at the screen in the way that someone else would look at it. Or assistive technologies. I talked about Zoom text previously, which is a visual impairment. But what about screen readers? So JAWS and NVDA being the big ones that make up about 80% of the market share. But ones like VoiceOver, that's also employed mobilely. It's been around since 2009, if you believe that, that we've had mobile screen readers for that long. And I would challenge anyone to try to enable that on their iPhone and use it and see how it goes. Or physical limitations, so keyboard-only limitations or switches. This is actually a keyboard built for kids. And then this is a switch which has a whole nother set of constraints to it physically. And I actually have never seen anyone use it, but I know it's something that's out there. You guys might have seen someone use it, I'm not sure. But it's very specific to the not having your all of your fingers. And there are ways that we can get around understanding all of these and how we're building technology. So there are tools like Axe and Wave and Google Lighthouse that you can run your web page through audits. And you can get back all of this good data and then say, oh, I should fix this and this and this. But that'll only get you partway there. And I think the idea is that being accessible or having an accessible experience isn't an automated process. It's not something that you can just gloss over or that technology is going to handle, but it's something that you have to have real people involved with. So this is where my recommendations for accessibility come in. So at Insight, we're big partners with Scrum.org, and we advocate for Agile. So if anyone's familiar with that, part of that is having a definition of done. And so instead of reacting and waiting to build something and make sure it's accessible to the end, let's build it right from the beginning and make testing part of your everyday definition of done. So how do we do that? We establish design and dev standards. So what are the ways that we know from the jump start that we're building something that's accessible visually and from a technical perspective? Testing with keyboard only. If you've never tried, if you've seen people work with just a keyboard and throw the mouse away, you should be able to navigate the experience. There should be tab orders that reflect the way a user would move through the interface. Test with screen readers. For all of the internal tools and software that we've built, we do have screen readers that are based on the company policy. And that's a whole different scenario because I don't know how to work that way, but testing that way, you can see how someone would have a whole different experience with the interface that you designed visually. Testing at 200% zoom. This seems like a very simple thing, but you would be amazed how interfaces break down as you enlarge them. And then running it through auditing tools. I would encourage people to use some of those tools that are available out there because they do bring back good results, but that doesn't remove the need for these manual tests. And most importantly, share the learnings across your teams because I think the more that you're able to share those best practices and nuances that you're building in, the better that everyone can build their products and the more inclusivity that you'll have across the organization. So now I'll go into hyperdrive because I don't know what time it is. So, Twister. How many people played Twister? How many people have thought about how accessible Twister is? 0. Okay, so what are all the factors that go into Twister? So you have someone physically spinning the wheel. You have someone that has to see what color that is. You have to have someone that calls out what color. You have to have people physically on the mat placing their hands on different colors. When you look at this game, it's funny that no one ever thinks about it because largely, most of us don't have to. So we'll get back to Twister. This is a different story. So in England, there's a mother and daughter. I think it was Claire and her daughter Katie. And Katie was in a wheelchair. And I think she was 7. And they had been going back and forth with the city to make it easier for them to get in and out of their flat. So this is it right here. Little step, probably really a pain to get up and down, not accessible. And back and forth, you'd think they'd do something. And you know what they did? They built a ramp. That's fantastic, right? Right out their front door, they have this little monstrosity. And they built it right, that's for sure. It has like 12 switchbacks. I think it costs like 40,000 pounds. It's very accessible. They built the thing right. And they delivered the outcome. They wanted something accessible. It's accessible. And I think that's where I start to draw the line. Here's another view, if you didn't get a good glance at it. But accessibility is an outcome. It's not the process of getting to the solution. And so if you had actually talked to Katie and her mom, do you think they would have said they wanted this in their front yard? Probably not. At the end of the day, it's embarrassing. It takes more time to get down, and people start using it as a skate park. So I'm sure they've moved. But this is just one of the stories of people that are so focused on building it right that that's not enough in the process, right? We're all trying to achieve this accessible outcome, but really building it right is only a piece of the puzzle. And that's one thing that we focus on a lot is, are we building the right thing? Because we have a lot of very talented technical people who can take that solution and build it the best they can, but inclusive design means building the right thing. This is a mantra. Microsoft actually has a fantastic inclusive design website if you want to check it out. But inclusivity is really about the journey. A lot of us here are in the technology business, maybe not everyone. Some people may just be starting out, but we're in the business of solving problems with technology. And that's a great thing. Like Domino's, you may have autonomous cars driving pizza. Like Katie and Claire, you might have a ramp that's the solution, and it solves the problem, but is it right? And really, we can't bridge that gap without something in the middle. And what inclusive design says is that we aren't putting ourselves in the middle of that. A lot of times, we're trying to bridge the gap between, oh, the user wants this, or this is the right solution. I've talked to X person, or the business owner said, oh, we need this feature, so we're going to deliver that feature because they think they know best. And as soon as we put ourselves in the middle, we introduce all sorts of bias to the equation. So inclusivity is not about just bridging the gap, but it's about bridging the gap with the right people. And that takes work, a lot of work, especially in a lot of organizations and enterprises that don't have those people currently working there, and that you have to seek them out and test with people that have low vision or that have screen readers. So it's not something that's easy to do, but it's something that's very important to start doing and sharing. So this is probably an obvious one, but does this person have a disability? Does this person have a disability? Does this person have a disability? Okay, so I think we can think about inclusivity and accessibility and disabilities in a different way. We have people that are permanently disabled. We have people that are temporarily disabled. Say they broke their leg and they have a cane or something to get better. Or we have people that have a situational disability. So there are different ways that we can think about accessibility and inclusive design, not just with people that have permanent disabilities, and we need to be considering that. Just in terms of upper extremities, there are over 21 million people in the United States that have some loss of that. So why does this matter? So seeking out people and understanding where there are specific constraints, that it actually makes us build better products for everyone. So in terms of the form that I first showed you, yeah, you guys could fill that out fine, right? The first one, even though it was tough with the thing over your eye. But how much better was the last version of it? Was that a better experience overall? And you didn't have limitations. So let's start thinking about the individual constraints and seeking out people that have constraints and designing better for everyone. So I do recommendations, it's my thing. So building inclusivity into your design process and into your testing process and into your culture is really where this starts. And it can be difficult to do, like I said, but talking to a diverse set of users, we often use people that we are like-minded or that we know or that are in our proximity as our guinea pigs. And that's not always the best thing to do because you introduce that bias and the same mindset and the same abilities. Identify those constraints. So you have to, even if you don't have those in-house, if you're able to identify the constraints that people could have and say you are building software for an enterprise and they can employ people now that have a disability, then you've introduced a lot of value to that organization and to a group of people that normally wouldn't have that opportunity. Uncover workarounds. So this is something that you may not have assistive technologies, but there may be ways that you're working around technology based on your limitations. And we find that in a lot of organizations that they don't identify as having a constraint, but they might be doing different things to work around that. And then testing and learning and being an advocate. I think the only way that we continue to make strides in this area is by learning where we have gaps in our knowledge and encouraging the whole organization and enterprise to take the next steps and make the extra effort and time to build accessible experiences and take inclusive design into account, hopefully hire more inclusively and a diverse group of people. So, that was a whirlwind of stuff. But does it change your view on this question? It may or may not, based on the first answers that I got. It sounds like we have a really good group of people here that's been rooted in some level of accessibility and has empathy for different types of people. But I think it's important to continue to ask, are we just checking the boxes? Are we working against a list of compliance risks? Or are we actually trying to be inclusive and hire and do right by human? Did I just say by human? So let's think about Twister. I don't know, what time is it? I'm over time, I think, already, but this is a fun thing to do if you have time with your team, group, organization. Get together and brainstorm ways to make Twister accessible. So think about the different types of limitations that people might have and how you might transform what seems like a simple game, right, in concept, but what would you do for someone who's colorblind, who can't hear, or someone who can't see, or someone who has physical limitations? And you might come up with something that's brilliant. Questions?